Where do you live? Did you get fiber?
Okay, well, welcome to, good evening and welcome to the second virtual meetup during these challenging COVID times. So I hope everyone is safe and well. I'm Bruce Lathrop. I'm a member of the MADIA board and will be introducing our presenter. But first I wanted to thank Brian Quant, who is helping with the production of this meetup, and Brenda Trainer, who is moderating the chat discussion, which you should see at the right of your screen. And you may have to sign into Google to participate, but if not, that's how you chat on the right. Before we start the presentation, I wanted to tell you a little bit about MADIA. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization centered at the heart of San Gabriel Valley in California. Our mission is to ensure that the technical, scientific, and industrial workforce has the tools to be connected and to succeed through programs such as this on entrepreneurship, business finance and organization, and technology development and commercialization. Our next meeting after this is June 10th. In these times, it's hard to be sure that that will happen, but we are striving to have our next meeting on June 10th. If you have any feedback on this program, our email is email@mediatech.org. You can tell us about this program or ideas for future programs. I'll now turn to introducing our presenter, who is Dr. Naresh Menon. He is the founder of Covisus Inc. He has a bachelor's and PhD from Purdue University. During his doctorate studies, he focused on sensor fabrication, instrumentation, and novel data analytic methods. His earlier career was with Corning Incorporated and then Northrop Grumman Missile Systems. He founded Chromalogic in 2007 with a mission to develop disruptive deep science applications to save lives and make the world more secure and safer and save lives. Chromalogic is an independent innovation center which has developed unique solutions for the US government and Fortune 100 companies in the military and medical space. Starting in 2015, he spun out Covisus, which you'll be hearing about today, which provides breakthrough capabilities in solving problems in the military and medical supply chain. So I will hand it over to Dr. Menon.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for taking the time to come out. Usually the last time we did this MADIA event, it's always an informal, sort of a friendly gathering of people we know in the community. So it's really unfortunate that we can't see each other. But I did make sure that I have a beer from the local brewery, Pacific Plate. So we support our local economy. And this is very informal. I'm going to keep it at a point more of a storytelling. So it's the Covisus story. And Bruce asked me to kind of go through a storyline that kind of says, how did we get started? Why are we doing what we do? And then we'll get into details, technical details, if anybody has further questions. So first off, none of this is possible without the great support of Brian, Bruce, and Brenda. So I want to thank them first off. So Covisus the story of Covisus is not complete without a story of how we started. And the start comes from Chromalogic. Chromalogic is a company I founded back in 2007. The whole purpose of Chromalogic was to be an innovation center for deep tech. When I started in 2007, my previous career was at Northrop and at Corning. I always felt that deep technology innovation was always a challenge for a large company to do because it was too risky to get into breakthrough products because they ended up obsolescing some of their own technology to invest in breakthrough products. And it was very hard for small companies to get into deep technology because the timelines are very long and investors don't have that kind of patience. So I started Chromalogic with the whole purpose that we would get funded by large organizations and especially the federal government through a non-dilutive mechanism so that we can actually develop the science and the engineering processes behind an innovative idea, and we could take it through and reduce the risk on the technical risk so that when it gets ready for market, we have validated the market and we can take it out. So the whole purpose of as an innovation center is we do a range of projects from healthcare to supply chain, which is what I'm going to spend most of my time talking about, supply chain. So we have a team of 40 full-time employees, but half of us have PhDs, varying from physics to biology and cell biology. And we are in Monrovia. Come visit us. We are perhaps the second most famous company on Shamrock after Trader Joe's. I'm just kidding, but come and visit when we can socially engage again. So I want to switch gears. So our business model is develop a deep technology built through non-dilutive financing. And once the technology gets mature, we spin it off or we license it out. So Covisus is a wholly owned spin-off of Chromalogic, which focuses exclusively on supply chain. So when we talk about supply chain, most of us take supply chains for granted. We think of this we think of Walmart, we think of Amazon as supply chain. But there's a lot about supply chain that I learned, and I hope I can kind of share with you along the way. So we as a customer are at the very end of what the supply chain does. But it starts at the very beginning in a distributed way through raw materials. Then you have multiple raw material sources that come together to a supplier, and then the manufacturer, distribution, and finally to a customer. One of the most important parts of a supply chain, and a lot of lawyers and contract work and a lot of inspection and quality goes behind establishing provenance. What is provenance? It's just a fancy word of saying, I know where my parts came from. And if you're a supplier, you want to know where your raw materials came from. Because if you know where your raw materials came from and you trust that, then you can actually start realizing savings because you don't have to validate the raw material as much. Because you wrote it down in the contract. I trust David here to supply me so many tons of iron, and John here to supply me so many tons of titanium. I know that those raw materials meets the quality requirements, and I trust it. Then I don't have to spend time validating it. So I can have savings, and I can pass the savings on to my manufacturer and eventually the customer. The second part about knowing your provenance and having the trust is that you have safety built in. Because when you know where your parts come from, the trust results in that the part itself is safe and the customer gets a safe part. So that's sort of in just what, in an entire broad supply chain, why provenance and trust is important. But why should you, the consumer, or I, the consumer, should care about provenance? And why should I care about where my parts came from? Two major reasons. One is counterfeiting. The second is recalls. Now, counterfeiting is a very complex, billions of dollars are spent and lost in counterfeiting. And we are members of the IACC, which is the International Anti-Counterfeiting Coalition. And one of the challenges of counterfeits is say your wife wants a Gucci handbag. Most people think of counterfeits as knockoffs you get in Amazon or down in downtown LA or something. Say your wife wants a Gucci handbag and you don't want to buy the original one, so you go to downtown LA and buy a fake one and you pass it off as an original one, and she's happy and you're happy and you save a ton of money and everybody's happy. But that's just a small part of counterfeiting. And in fact, that itself is damaging because a lot of bad players, such as gangs and illegal traffickers, actually profit heavily from those counterfeits. And one of the most counterfeited products, surprisingly, are cigarettes. That's a different story altogether. But one that impacts us tremendously are counterfeit drugs and microchips that the military has to deal with. In fact, the genesis of Covisus came from a military need. We were funded by the Department of Defense, and we are still funded by the Department of Defense to build a solution stack that helps them mitigate supply chain risk through counterfeits. The drug part is actually very insidious. 60% of online drugs purchased in the US are fake. Well, who buys online drugs? There are folks who want to save money because the pharmaceuticals that they buy from their drugstore are incredibly expensive. So they go online and buy it from Canada or somewhere else or from around the world. And this was actually a story of one of my friends whose mother has Alzheimer's and she was having trouble. I mean, he was having trouble paying for all the drugs. So he went and bought, he researched it and got something at 30% less from Canada. He broke open the pill to grind it down to feed her, and he found charcoal in the middle. So this is very scary. That's one side, counterfeits. The other side is recalls. And I'm sure all of us are aware that at some point in our lives, we've had a recall notice for a car. But that's because your automobile company is able to track you down. But the bigger problem is when you cannot even track the person down who has the defective product, especially in the case of, for example, an FDA recall. This is a GAO reports that are out there that says that 56% of class 1 medical device. Now, class 1 medical device means if you don't take care of it, you could die from it. These are implantable orthopedic screws or breast implants. We can't trace that during a recall to the patient. And the patients, there are people walking around. There's a 50-50 chance we'll find who has that implant. And this is a major problem. As you would imagine, it's life-threatening. And so are recall notices. You buy a table saw from Home Depot. Home Depot doesn't know there's a recall notice. There's no traceability to the patient, to the individual, the consumer. So we are unable to track the people who have defective parts. There are laws. Unfortunately, there are new laws that are in place, both from the FDA side, especially in healthcare, both from drug and medical devices. And we are funded to develop solutions for these regulated industries. And we'll talk a little bit about it later. So what are the current technologies that are out there that could potentially address this problem? And the most common one is, of course, that we see in pretty much every product, which is barcodes, RFIDs, QR codes. These are external labels that are attached to a part. They are printed, they're attached externally. But the problem is these are not intrinsic, so they could come off, or somebody could forge it. They can be easily copied and destroyed, and they require some sort of a visible view, so you can easily forge it. But the more important part is some of them don't meet regulations for the traceability because you can't store individual serializations. If you're making 20 million parts, you can't necessarily serialize each one of them. And physical labels sometimes affect the part because say you have a 2 millimeter screw or 3 millimeter orthopedic implantable screws. For example, Johnson & Johnson, one of the largest medical device company, they have a business where they put in 20 million orthopedic screws in patients globally. Now, each one of them have to be traced. You cannot physically mark them because if you directly engrave them, you may actually distort the product itself, and it leads to high cost of ownership. So those are the current solutions don't work. So what did we do? So we decided through funds, generous support from you, the taxpayer, through the Department of Defense, to create a completely breakthrough way of create an intrinsic and immutable link between a product and its data. This ensures our way for traceability, security, and authenticity. Now, we talked a lot about personal consumer problems, but this is also a need that extends beyond recalls and security. It also has the opportunity that once you know item level traceability, you can, when you talk about Industry 4.0 or Internet of Things, but there's so much of data that's captured with during the manufacturing process, there is no way to intrinsically link it to the part itself. And this piece comes in, brings it all in together. So, I'm sorry. So, and this is the kind of business that Covisus is in, to address this immediate market opportunity of over 10 billion in this entire area. And they are across multiple sectors, so medical devices, aerospace, pharma, automotive, and consumer and food beverages. And we are currently working with the leading organizations. So there is an urgency mainly driven by regulations, as shown above. And there's also a ton of need in terms of market opportunity from addressable markets to the projected revenue that we as Covisus are seeing in the next few years. So we are in a very large growth trajectory, and we are a team within Chromologic. We're a team of about 12 people. Of the 40 people, about 12 of us work exclusively on Covisus-related programs. So what is our technology? Our technology we call virtual tag or VTag. The way it works is we take a photograph of an item, and from that photograph, we extract its surface texture. That surface texture can be used to, with our proprietary algorithms, can be used to recreate the fingerprint of that article for tracking and tracing, or we do some classifiers using machine learning techniques to start determining whether the part is conforming. Is it a suspect part, or does it meet certain specifications of conformance? And we have products in the field associated with both these aspects. And this is sort of a couple of ranges of our products. We have benchtop machines, we have fully automated machines, we have a handheld version, which is actually a bolt-on top of our iPhone. We're lucky to be in this, even in this downturn, where it continues to be funded, we see ourselves as the right side of history, where we need more traceability because anytime there's a disruption in the supply chain like we face today with PPEs and medications, a foolproof method to ensure traceability only enhances our health and promotes our well-being. So that's all I had in terms of formal slides. I thought I'll give you guys a quick video. Some of them are on our website, but just kind of give you a flavor of the range of things we can now kind of talk us through it. So this is sort of kind of creating the idea that what most parts in the supply chain, such as bearings, microchips, to the naked eye, to look identical, but we can't tell them apart by just visual examination, and it's too onerous to individually label them. So VTag, by using our technique, we have like a 3-step process. The step 1 is you enroll the part. It's a 2-step. You enroll the part within the system. And what we mean by enrolling is you place the part under our system, which is either the benchtop system that's being shown here, or we have a fully automated robotic platform that does things that few parts, like couple of seconds per part in a production line. We capture these images, we enroll them into our database. The database can be accessed by anywhere nationally and globally based on permission settings, and then you verify it. So in this case, this gentleman here is placing one item at a time. And as you can see, all these apples look identical. Say now you are in the transportation mode. You enroll it at one site, and you transport it to another. Parts are shipped, no labels, no barcodes. And during that shipment or supply chain, there could be bad players who could come in and interrupt that whole supply chain and distort or replace the parts with authentic parts with suspect parts or counterfeit parts. Or some of them can be just happen accidentally. So for example, in the case of pharmaceuticals, one of the challenges we face is they're not necessarily counterfeit in the sense if you do a chemical analysis, they may still be active, but they turn out to be more like they have expired drugs and are passed on as viable drugs. In this case, the person who's verifying it places the part under the system, scans it, presses a button, says verify, and if it matches, it says verified. And if it doesn't, it scans the data and says this is a suspect part. And then you can do some further analysis and figure out why it's a suspect, and maybe you can track it that way. And as you can see, we don't add anything to the part. We don't change the part itself, except when we take a bite out of it. So when we just recently won an award, we entered a competition with Airbus in Europe, and we showed them how we can address an aerospace problem. And this was an international competition, and we came out first in that competition. And there we showed that when you talk about a distributed supply chain for building an aircraft, parts come in from everywhere. And how do you track and trace it so that you can put it in just in time in the right place, and you can track it back sometimes even during forensic analysis. So this is one of our robotic platforms that we built. Again, has a camera and it captures the images and in real time converts the V tag, which is hidden inside. It's a covert signature. We can also do that with a handheld device. Here, for example, is an example where we have a bunch of pills. They are all identical pills that come out of a box. We wrote numbers behind each one of them. So we have enrolled all these pills already, and here we're just showing the verification process. As you can see, if you look at the image from the pill, there's nothing on it. It just says they're all identical. But when we go to the process, we align it, take a photo, the algorithm works, and it'll report back the result. It says the part is secure, and it has a number that we wrote, the number 9. And our system is currently integrated at the Center for Manufacturing Innovation in Chicago. Down there in the corner in this massive warehouse is our VTAC system. Here, this is a 7-day-a-week demo of our system where there's production line, just to show customers as they come by how to integrate VTAG within their production line. So this machine makes these tokens, they print it, and then they wash it, and it just goes through a whole process. So it can be integrated into an inline process for automation. So it's a long video. I will kind of skip forward and just kind of say, scroll forward here. It's washed, goes through a VTAG, it enters some telemetry, goes into a VTAG machine where the VTAG is created, and then we securely store it in a database. That's our team. Thank you very much for hearing our story. And I guess if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Okay, thank you, Naresh. There is, as was said earlier, there's a chat function. So if you wish to ask a question, now's the time. While people are doing that, I guess I will ask a couple questions. Are you involved in COVID in any way in terms of counterfeit masks or ventilators or vaccines, if we had one, other drugs?
Not Covisus, but Chromologic is actually developing certain assays for helping, funded by NIAID, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. We have a project where we are actually started a clinical trial to figure out when a patient who's identified positive for COVID, what are the likelihood that that patient will potentially end up in the ICU and have adverse respiratory distress. It's called acute respiratory distress syndrome. And so Chromologic is working on it. Covisus does not have any programs related to COVID.
Okay. Also, as we discussed, kind of how you built your business, and I guess Chromologic is kind of integrally involved in that. But what kind of pivots have you had to make in terms of when you started Chromologic or Covisus and changed your path? How have you any good stories in that respect or outcomes?
The pivots are mostly related to, so we have very big, hairy, audacious goals all the time. And the challenges are always been whether we can find the talent to match our ambitions. And we've had to pivot periodically to set up centers, support folks in other part of the country so that we can advance our development and the technology development process. So we have set up, so that's always been a challenging pivot kind of thing. How do you, it's depending on talent constraints, how do you build a company to still be on the bleeding edge of science?
I know you're getting some chats, but I've not seen them used on my screen. Not sure why. Here they are. Okay. I can see it now. So one person asked, how fast is the automation and the scanning? Is that, you showed apples, which probably isn't the key target product, but nonetheless, when you have a lot of little parts in mass, how fast is this process?
Well, we do scans, like we could do hundreds in a second to sometimes, because for us, the intrinsic speed is the camera speed, which is milliseconds. So for us, we're capturing the image at milliseconds, and we push the images into our database servers, and things are done in a batch process. So the limiting factor is how fast can we take an image, and how fast can so if it's a production line where lots of parts are flying by, we capture within few milliseconds.
And on the receiving end, is it just as fast, or is it tedious to go through and confirm?
It depends on what the receiving end is. Is it a handheld system? The biggest problem with handheld systems that we see is the user having to just place the part underneath, just put the part underneath our scanner. And just like a barcode scanner, there's some time and delay associated with it. That's where the majority of the time is the user just putting the part underneath the system. And then again, the image capture is milliseconds. Maybe with the iPhone, it's maybe like 20 milliseconds, and then the processing is very fast.
Another question that's interesting is regarding Industry 4.0 and Provenance. What, if anything, are you seeing in terms of blockchain and smart contract integration? Is that part of your process or other processes?
No, that's a great question. And blockchain is blockchain is currently is all based on document level security of your supply chain. It doesn't, when a blockchain, it stays in a virtual layer, on a digital layer. It does not come down to an physical item level. To do that, you need a label that links the blockchain to the part. And we actually can replace that label by using the V tag. So we integrate very well with the blockchain architecture. The second thing that we can do, which actually lowers the need for a blockchain-like security, is because our V tag is intrinsic to the part itself, and it's unforgeable, it's immutable, it's intrinsic. So you don't even need the digital blockchain keys to ensure authenticity, because we are that V tag itself is the authentication key.
And your system is on both sides of the transaction, so you don't need to have blockchain. Exactly. your stuff.
So there are advantages of blockchain. Mainly the main advantage is security, but the big disadvantage of blockchain as configured today is that you need to know your configuration architecture way ahead of time. And once it's locked in, it's very hard to push updates on your blockchain network across all your user base because it's designed to be resilient to those changes in an open blockchain architecture. In our case, we can give the blockchain level security with traditional relationship database. So we give the security of a blockchain, but use traditional relationship database, which is what everybody uses. If you're looking at an ERP system, it's a traditional relationship database. You don't need to change it into a blockchain architecture.
Okay.
I hope that answered the question. I see it's Chris. Chris asked that question.
Yes. On the, you started with, or you still actually are using contracts and I guess grants as well, and you now have commercialized that. So any thoughts on your strategy on how you took, I don't know if you started with SBIRs or something like that and then went from there, and how do you successfully transition from government opportunities to making them into commercial products?
I mean, there's a lot of hit and miss in that whole effort. Yes, we started with SBIRs. SBIRs, as some may know, are a mechanism that is a non-dilutive funding from the federal government to address certain key high-risk problems that larger industries don't necessarily address. So it's a kind of a challenge and a set aside for small businesses. So we are proud participants of that mechanism. That gives us a seed funding to develop a technology. And then we have a very rigorous process of how we advance an SBIR funded program through what we call technology readiness levels. And then we pass and fail it. Some technologies move to the next level because we find that as we advance the technology, the cost for producing this part is not sustainable in the market, and we don't pursue it any further. So it's a constant negotiated process, and it's a discovery process that goes hand in hand with the funding that we get. So yeah, keep the end in mind, keep the commercial conversations. We start talking to potential customers as soon as we get our funding, and we're constantly probing key opinion leaders on how our product offering can actually solve problems for them.
Okay. Another COVID-related question is, can your employees work from home? What operational changes are you foreseeing for the next 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? How are you handling the safer at home and all the other things?
So we are designated by the U.S. Federal government as a critical business. So we are fully operational. But we also want to be in compliance with the state mandates to be to work safely at home. So we have about no more than 10 people come in every day. We have a process where we log in. People need to come in to do lab work. So we have about 10 people come in. We have a 12,000 square foot facility. Everybody wears a face mask. We have our surfaces wiped down twice a day. We have deep cleaning done twice a week. As we move forward, we are constantly discussing with our staff because there are no clear directives. And I think every place of work will kind of negotiate their own best way for them to A, be productive, B, be safe. Actually, A, be safe, and B, be productive. I had that wrong. But so what we are, besides having everybody's wearing face masks and surfaces being wiped down, what we're thinking of is people will come in waves. There'll be groups of people who come in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday 1 week, and then Tuesday, Thursday the next week, while we'll take some stuff from work from home. But a vast majority of us are working from home. I go in myself physically 2 days a week.
Okay, another question is any of this working at the consumer level? If I buy a really expensive handbag, is there any way I can use your system, or now or in the future, to verify that it's legitimate?
It's totally doable at the consumer level, but we are not pushing right now for a consumer level solution, mainly because the brand owners, which in this case the handbag makers, the Gucci's and the Rolexes of the world, they don't want to necessarily invest in the traceability piece. They believe they have a robust process. For them, it's very simple. If you go and buy a product from their authorized store, you get an authentic product. If you go buy it from eBay, that's a risk you take. If you buy it from a street site, that's definitely a massive risk you take. So their whole business model, especially brand holders or of luxury goods, is that buy it from their authorized distribution channels. So so they are not necessarily willing to invest to give the consumer the technology to track it. Our technology is perfectly capable of doing it, but there's plenty of work for us right now. We are incredibly busy, and I think hopefully in 2 to 3 years, as the technology matures and the adoption cycle becomes more entrenched, we will see this happening at the consumer level, where you buy something on Amazon and you can authenticate it when you open the package.
Do you do anything, or could you do anything in the future with something that's been, way beyond the time when it was received, but it's been out for 10 years, and I'm thinking a painting or something like that, where you could do you keep the data so that you could forever basically have the fingerprint of that particular widget?
Absolutely. I think we have done long-term tests. We have done all kinds of temperature variations, soak tests. We have done, like for example, we have taken currency and baked it, washed it. We have taken parts, put it in tumblers and scratched it. We have put fingerprints on it. Yes, it's a very robust signature. We're not concerned about the signature remaining sustained. The only thing that will get that signature damaged or remove the signature is somebody's surface abrades it and takes off a layer of the surface, which we consider that as a potential counterfeit or illegal activity. So if you take a painting and paint over it, yes, that we will not see the signature again.
Have you used it on any paintings or famous paintings or?
No, we have not. We can't afford a famous painting yet, but yes, we would love to do it if there was an opportunity.
Another question is, you've covered some of it, but what sectors really need Covisus, and what are you targeting?
So right now we're targeting the highly regulated sectors. For us as medical devices, aerospace, and pharma. And then soon afterwards will be automotive and food safety. So our highest priority is healthcare related, because there are right now unachievable FDA mandates that large medical device companies are not able to meet, and they're getting waivers from the FDA. There are drug safety requirements that are coming into play by 2023, which requires traceability to the product, to the pharmaceutical level. And there is no technology. There's a big technology gap to achieve that. So we are actively in those two areas, as well as aerospace, which is our sort of our legacy. That's where we got funded from the Department of Defense. So we do projects for the Missile Defense Agency, the Defense Logistics Agency, as well as other agencies within the DoD.
So you founded Comalogic in 2007 in Monrovia, I guess?
Pasadena. Pasadena.
So and then you've moved to Monrovia, and how has this area served your business in terms of workforce and just a place to have a business? I
think it's fantastic. I think Monrovia sits on the corner intersection where we are. It sits in the intersection of 210 and 605. So we can actually have people commute from San Bernardino, we have employees actually who drive in from Rancho Cucamonga, all the way from the San Gabriel Valley and from Irvine. And I think that cluster is very key, because if you're in Pasadena and you're driving from Rancho during commute time, as you know, Bruce, it'll add another 20, 30 minutes to your commute. Just that few miles east of Pasadena, and now you're able to access a talent group that you would not been able to access because of the commute times. So I think location-wise is great. I'm able to attend meetings in Irvine, which I would not have been bothered going to if I lived when I was in Pasadena, because it just was, another 40 minutes on the freeway. So that's location-wise been great. We do a lot of work with City of Hope for our Chromologic side. We have local collaborators in and around the area. We have a great relationship with Lab Launch and Oakrest, and we love the restaurants. And as I've already made a plug-in for some of our local breweries, so it's a great place, and our employees find it a very healthy environment. Some of them have located to Monrovia and raising their families here. So I think it's been a great move for us from Pasadena, for especially the kind of deep tech that we do. And Pasadena is still achievable. We still do a lot of projects with Caltech. So I think it's been a fantastic move for us.
Yeah, I was going to ask whether you had strong connections with Caltech or the other universities.
We do.
So, looking to see whether we have any more questions. Need more chatting going on here. Did I miss those that are monitoring the chat box? Have I missed any questions? Ryan, are you out there?
So I see a question from Brenda saying, what sort of employees do you look for? So we look for a broad range of staff. We are posting on our website, and we have a full-time recruiter who contacts folks on LinkedIn. We do both targeted, we'll call you if we're interested in the talent that you have. And we also have a job description up on our website. We were kind of worried that with COVID, it's going to be really hard to recruit, interview. I mean, the whole process, right? We are a very collaborative company and a very collaborative culture. So we want to see people, we want to have them come in face to face, interview, connect with them, and onboard them. So this was just recently we finally found our system of how we can onboard people, and just this week we hired somebody new. Last week we hired somebody new. And we are learning how to onboard and while we're social distancing. So it's been challenging, but we're still recruiting. We're still interviewing. I think we have a system to do that.
Can the audience hear that? I'm not. So the question was, what if you're interested in this company and what they're doing, and how would you and you're a student, what would you focus on and to get involved in this kind of industry?
Definitely a strong engineering program, which is a very hands-on program. Classes are great, but able to do things with your hands is incredibly important. We look for people who have not just good at grades, but are able to. We want to know what you did by yourself, not necessarily what grades you got in your classroom. For us, we hire heavily on the PhD side of things, because experimental scientists, because when an experimental scientist during the PhD program, we can gauge what they did by themselves in the lab and with their hands. It's kind of hard to do that, to see people who just come out of an undergraduate degree, to see what hands-on work they do. So we go through internship processes. Either they intern with us, or we look at see what they did during an internship program, or what hobbies they have. I mean, are their hobbies technically related? Do they like to work on cars? We look for a skill set that is very hands-on-ish.
Another question was how long. I think you said very beginning I mentioned you were founded in 2015, at least Covisus was. So was that did you go from 0 to 60 miles an hour, or how did that growth come, and how has your company grown? Covisus has grown over the last 5 years.
Combined, Chromologic and Covisus, we have constantly grown about 25 to 30% every year, which is a moderate amount of growth for us, and we like to keep it that way because it's sustainable growth. But Covisus has recently It took for us a while after we got funded because the projects and the problems that we solve are such deep tech problems. It just takes a while to mature it. And then once you mature the technology, most of the times that we show this to people, or when we initially showed it to people, they said, "What? You can do this? This is unbelievable." They don't even know how to use it. So we had to spend a lot of time in education of how to use a VTAG and the operating system. That's why we established this we're very deeply ingrained with this consortium in Chicago, which is a hub for manufacturing. And we have people walk by that manufacturing and say, "Wait a minute, you can do this? We can actually trace parts by just taking a picture of it. I want to know more." So, and that for that we kind of build a story around it. So it's a lot of storytelling, and it's been organic growth. So it's one thing to have technology ready, but also the adoption for anything. The sales cycles are very long because you are changing the way where a company is changing the entire supply chain, their data management. So it's not just just sign up on a website and you're done. No, you have to integrate this with the pro, and it has to be cost effective to the entire life cycle of the product. So it's a pretty complex discussion, and we solve that one large company at a time.
So are you getting a lot of private sector uptake, or?
Oh, yes. We are actually we kind of work with the sort of the largest company in a sector. So our customers are, like, for example, Boeing and Johnson & Johnson in the medical space, Boeing in the aerospace. So we focus on them because as leaders, they have the ability to invest and breakthrough products, and what they end up doing becomes available to everybody else in the sector because they are thought leaders, and their solution, they want to create an ecosystem that everybody can adopt because it drives the compliance requirement for everybody, and everybody wins. So we have contracts in place with large companies saying that what we develop for them, we can share with everybody in that sector. It's not a competitive advantage, it's a consumer-focused advantage.
So another question I see is internships and in general, and then maybe summer internships, and then is there an opportunity for virtual, in these virtual times, is there a chance for internships?
We have to think about it. I have to sit down with my leadership team to figure out how we can do virtual internships. But typically we do always have interns during the summers. That's the time we have anywhere between 2-3 interns running around doing different projects. And it's a very hands-on mentoring process because we teach them from how to write code to how to collect data. So it's a very immersive process. I don't know how we'll do it this summer. I need to think about this, and essentially it's going to be on the shoulders of our leader and our management team saying, "Hey, if we had an intern, how would we work with them?" So this is, if anybody has ideas, please email me. I'm happy. I'm looking for as much input and feedback as possible.
So what kind of, I know you have a lot of PhDs, but do you have people with an associate degree all the way up to PhD?
We have people without a degree. We have people with associate degrees. We have people with undergraduates, masters, the whole spectrum.
Have you had any? How's Citrus as a source of employees? Citrus College.
Yes,
that's in our area here.
Yeah, we don't have anybody from Citrus. Somehow they never applied to any of our positions.
Well, one thing we're trying to do is figure out a way to connect with them a little bit better. So maybe
that'd be great.
That.
Let's do that.
Any other chats, questions out there? I'm getting lots of emails or texts. Okay. Final call. I'm updating my screen here. Okay, well, we've kept you on the phone or the video for about an hour, so we'll wait, more coming in maybe. Robotics. Someone wants to know about robotics. I think that's from a Logic, you do some robotic stuff.
We do at Covisus too. We are integrating this entire VTAG solution with multiple robotic platforms, from a gantry to pick-and-place robotic systems to rapidly scan a large array of parts. Just bought a $40,000 robotic machine to start integrating and writing code for it. So it's a lot of fun.
Actually, one question I missed, and you kind of covered it, but where do you see most of your growth, either one of the companies, and what you say it's 20 to 25% a year, or is there anything even bigger than that in the pipeline, perhaps, that you can talk about?
I mean, pre-COVID, we were anticipating a lot of growth in Covisus because there were some deadlines that our customers wanted to meet for regulatory enforcement. And those deadlines have shifted because of COVID. So we were anticipating sort of a hockey stick growth for Covisus, but now which was actually pretty terrifying, but now we have a much more manageable growth for Covisus for 2021, 2022. But,
has your growth been kind of bootstrapping? Is private equity involved, or is it mostly just been
No. Yeah, it's all internal. We have both contracts. SBIRs are maybe about 25% of the entire revenue stream. The rest are large contracts that we get from both the federal government as well as commercial companies. So SBIRs gives us a seed process going to like creative nebula of things that we could do, and then the rest of it is through mature contracts with to build products and deliver solutions.
Okay. Well, I will wrap it up then. I guess if there's no more last-minute questions, I think there aren't. Anyway, I thank you very much for taking the time to present in this somewhat awkward but becoming less awkward medium of Zoom or the equivalent. I'd like to thank the audience for joining us tonight, and I look forward to hearing from you at our next meeting in June, hopefully. So with that, I'll wish everyone a good night and stay safe, and thanks again for everyone's help.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Thank you.